Awesome. Okay. Good afternoon, folks. Welcome to today's webinar, all centered around data storytelling through visualization and analytics. My name is Rebecca Stasiak, and I am the marketing lead for our AI and innovation programming at MacEwan University School of Continuing Education. This is a series of professional programs that aim to bridge the gap between knowing about AI and understanding how to lead with it. Today's webinar features information you will learn in two of our courses launching this winter and fall, data democratization and data processing and projection for strategic information. That last one is a micro-credential. And to lead today's webinar, I'm honored to present to you Isaac Namichi and Henrietta Boateng. Isaac is the Executive Director of Institutional Planning and Research at the Red Deer Polytechnic and has leveraged data for over a decade of experience to lead the institution's use of data for strategic decision-making and organizational effectiveness. That is lengthy, but it needs to be. His expertise spans institutional research, analytics, and project management across post-secondary and government sectors, and he is currently pursuing a Doctor of Education at Western University. Henrietta holds a Master's of Science in Public Health and over 15 years of experience specializing in using research, analytics, and AI to solve complex health challenges. She also uses advanced data modeling, and tools like SQL and Tableau to transform complex data sets into actionable insights, advancing evidence-based strategies to improve health outcomes. Again, very lengthy, but very, very necessary. Thank you both for being here today. Before we start this, I'd also like to thank the land on which we gather. MacEwan University School of Continuing Education acknowledges that we are located on Treaty 6 territory, the traditional gathering place for many Indigenous peoples, including the Cree, Dene, Nakota Sioux, and Saulteaux and Métis. This university honors the history, cultures, languages, and ongoing relations with First Nation, Métis, and Inuit peoples, viewing the acknowledgement as a step towards reconciliation and a strong, positive relationship. Lastly, before we begin, I will remind members to keep their microphones muted as we are recording today's webinar, and that all questions asked will be answered after the presentation. Feel free to ask your questions during the presentation by typing in the chat box area, and then once the webinar is over, we'll post a link for you to view the recording and send it directly to all registrants. Okay, that's all for me now. Please welcome Isaac and Henrietta.
Thank you, and welcome to this webinar. The purpose of this webinar is to introduce you to AI, data storytelling, and how you can use this new technology and this new advancing tools to be able to gather insights for the work you do and for potential employment and activities in the future. So what would you learn today? We're going to talk about data visualization, but not just the visualization. We're looking at the power of a story-driven visualization. We will look at common pitfalls and how to avoid them. We'll look at tools and design techniques. And after this section, I will pass it to Isaac, who will go through a demo on how you could use some of these tools to gain insights for yourselves. Finally, we'll give you an opportunity to ask questions, and we'll talk about next steps. So what is data democratization and storytelling? We all know that stories connect numbers and decision and strategies. We've all heard a story before, and we are accustomed to using information that we gain from stories in order to inform our decisions. Data democratization enables everyone, regardless of technical background, to understand and act on data. As I mentioned before, there are AI tools and no-code visualization tools that can accelerate insights and automate and accelerate creativity. Who benefits from data visualization, data democratization? So the first group is professionals, which are some of you who may be using data, have access to data. You just want to understand, okay, what is my company telling me? What's the data from my organization telling me? These tools allow you to be able to gain those insights without the ability to write complex codes. Prospective students, which is also some of you, will be able to learn how to use these tools in order to advance your careers and to better understand the world that is coming up. And of course, faculty, staff, partners, alumni, anyone can really use AI and data analysis. So what is story-driven visualization? To address this, we look at, the first thing we look at is the question. We start with a clear question to be answered. What is the question you want to answer? Once you have defined a question, you go and figure out what data you need in order to answer the question. There's always consideration for the audience, which will make a difference in how the data is presented, how it looks. An example is if you are presenting data to an executive, they may not have the time to read through a 50-page document, maybe a concise dashboard that emails to them the profit they made today will suffice. But if you were doing this for students, you might need to go in depth on how the data is visualized and why we came up with these answers. Visualization is a key part of the story-driven data. And the visualization piece in and of itself is a whole course. You want to be able to create visuals that provide information to your audience before they even think about it. You think of something like a traffic light. When you see a red light, you know it's a stop. When you see a green light, you have the permission to go ahead. So those are the kind of skills that you're going to learn to use in order to tap into the pre-processing brains of your audience in order to design effective dashboards. Lastly, you will gain insight from your analysis, and the insight will help you have a clear call to action. This is the now what. Well, women are more likely to make X amount of money. Now what? And that is what the call to action is all about. On this slide, I would like us to take a few moments to do a quick test on our own understanding of what type of visuals we need in order to give a good representation of a data set. So I will give you a minute or so to just scan the QR code provided on the screen. I'm going to do the same, and you will have a question to answer. I'll give it about 30 seconds. You have to show sales trends for 4 different products categories over the last 12 months. What's the best chart for this? So just select your answer and then click submit. And I'll be able to view the results. Okay, so it looks like 15 of the 19 participants have selected the line graph, which is the correct answer. So we are off to a good start. Thank you for participating in that. Next, we'll look at common pitfalls for in data storytelling. We've all heard a story that at some point the storyteller goes off tangent, brought in a random story, and at the end you're left confused, wondering, okay, what was that all about? And that is what you want to avoid. When it comes to the data itself, these 4 are some of the common pitfalls to avoid. Is by no means not an exhaustive list. There are other ways you could lose the story, but these are some of the most popular ones. Data cherry picking or misleading scales. To the left, you'll see an example of a scale. This is the what not to do. And to the right, you will see one with a proper x-axis. Another one is overplotting and clutter, which sometimes we want to put as much information as possible on a scale or on a dashboard. It doesn't have to be. You can always go straight to the point. The message will be received. Inconsistent baselines and units, which is you want to compare apples with apples, not apples with oranges. And accessibility consideration. We want to look at colors that are easy for everyone to see. And a lot of organizations have extensive documentation on what to consider when you are making some of these presentations. When it comes to the storytelling itself, there are certain things that you will want to avoid. Jargony language. We've all heard stories or presentations where there's a lot of abbreviations and acronyms, and you have no idea what those stand for. So that is an easy way to lose the audience. No clear takeaways. The now what is missing. So the story was great. Okay, now what? Undefined matrix or lack of context. This is a common pitfall because sometimes when you are working with data or you're working in your field, you assume that everybody understands what it means, for example, to be a student. An example of this will be saying, okay, we want to know the number of students in this classroom. But how do you define student? Is a student everyone who's enrolled? Do we count those who did not show up to class? And out of those who showed up to class, what proportion of the class must they have taken in order to be considered a student? What if the fees are not paid? Are they considered a student? So this is some of the questions you need to ask in order to define what you are measuring. It looks straightforward when you are in the field, but you need to put context around it. Dense slides are always a sure way to lose people. The intention is always good to put as much information as possible, But sometimes when you put too much information and there's no cohesion in the title and the reason for that slide, you could lose people because there's just way too much going on. Poor pacing. Sometimes when you're presenting, you may want to go too fast or too slow, but you need to pay attention to the audience and pace yourself so that you're able to get the message across in a pace that everybody can follow. Design principles for understanding. We'll also talk about designing dashboards and presenting data in a way that it is clear for everyone to understand. To the left, I have two presentations, and you see that the one on the left is clear, concise, clear labeling, and you see the one to the right, you may understand it, but it will take time to go through the three-dimensional scales, the different labeling, and the different graphs. So again, you want the information to be right in front of the consumer before they need to think about it. You want to look at clarity, visual hierarchy to emphasize takeaway. You want consistent visual language, accessibility, which we've already spoken about, and interactive where possible. Tools and techniques. To the left, I have compiled a list of tools and software that can be used for data analysis. Some of them require you to be able to code, which takes more time practice. That is not the point of these upcoming courses. The upcoming courses is going to allow you to be able to gain insights without needing to do extensive complex codes. So that makes the data and the technology really accessible to anyone. I've grouped the visualization here into what those tools are used for. For the upcoming course, you'll be looking at more the low code or no code options, which will be Nime and Orange. It's by no means not the only no code programs. Tableau has a very user-friendly interface where you could build dashboards without needing to code. But these two are just an example. Next, I'm going to walk you through the data storytelling plan. We're going to look at the setup, revealing insights, the takeaway, and the call to action. I touched on this briefly, but step one is defining the question. What question are you answering? And I mentioned earlier on the importance of having a clear definition of your question. Sometimes you will find these definitions in your data dictionary. To the left is a snippet of data elements, how it is written about in a data dictionary. Most data sources will give you this information, which will allow you to have a concise definition of what you are measuring. It will provide you what is to be in the inclusion and exclusion criteria, so that if somebody was to say, well, why isn't this student included in your analysis, you can clearly say, well, they attended 50 50% of the courses, not 51%, which was the cutoff for inclusion criteria. You also need to look at the key metrics to include, the caveats, and biases to call out. You can also look at assumptions, and all of these needs to be documented and stated ahead of presenting the data so that we all know what the definition of a student is. Step 2 will be preparing the data. First, you need to load the data set into your software, and then you need to clean the data, which includes defining how you're going to handle missing data. Now, that is not the only work to do when it comes to cleaning the data, but I thought it would be important to mention this because something simple as a missing field can have great consequences in the data that you are presenting. If a field is empty, is it null or is it zero? Did the person just score a mark of 0 and therefore nothing was entered? Or did they not take the exam? And will they be included in the average? Those kind of decisions are important to make ahead of starting the analysis, because taking an average, including people with missing values, will end up being lower than if those people were excluded, which is why it's important to define who is included and excluded in your analysis. Normalizing and transforming matrix is very important to avoid basically comparing oranges with apples. If one data set is presenting in percentages and one is presenting 1 in 100,000 of a population, those two are not the same. So you will need to either convert everything to percentages or everything into 1 in 100,000 population. Similar to weight and height, what is the scale that you're using? So you might need to transform data so that you have the same measurements. Next, we will look at the visual selection. You have to choose the right charts for the right messages. Again, you just want to be able to look at the data and be able to see what you're trying to show. Simple visuals are often better because they have the greatest impact. You don't need to think too much about what the presenter is trying to show you. This is a very good demonstration on what to avoid. The graph to the left and to the right are exactly the same. They are presenting exactly the same information. While this one may look fancy with fancy colors, if the question is, what is the calories in 100 grams of bacon compared to other food, other foods, then this answers it clearly. You look at it, red draws your attention. Okay, I'm looking at bacon, and you see where bacon lies compared to the rest of the food groups. You don't need all the labels, the colors, the backgrounds. It's just a lot of information here that is not really necessary. Next, build the narrative overlay. You want concise captions, enrollment growth in AI programs. You want to emphasize color for takeaway. You see, this is before the initiative, after the initiative, and you see there is a clear label here saying there's a 45% increase in enrollment growth, going from here to here, and then a clear call to action. Invest in literacy to boost program participation. Now, when your data analysis is done, visualization is done, you're feeling good about it, it is always important to validate with other people. You want to check with people who are outside your expertise, who are outside your organization, and that will allow you to see how other people see your work. It's sometimes difficult to see errors, especially when you've been working on the same data sets and everything makes sense to you. If they don't understand it, it's a good chance to make revisions before you present it to a wider audience. You want to test with non-experts. You check contrast and reliability. This is very important because sometimes your data the analysis that you've performed and the takeaways may be contradicting existing knowledge. So you will need to look at that and see, why is it contradicting? Is it reliable? You want to check keyboard navigation. This comes in handy for more complex dashboards where people will be clicking in and out. Sometimes you want to share it and watch how people interact with the dashboard. Why are they clicking there? To see if your dashboard is intuitive to the average person. You want to check accessibility compliance, which is making sure that the visuals are easy to ingest, the colors are accessible, you're checking for color blindness, if everybody can be able to see and understand the data that you are presenting. And of course, you want to check organizational requirements. Different organizations require different color schemes, fonts, layouts. So you want to be able to check that. Next, I'm going to pass the presentation to Isaac, who's going to go through a live demo on how to create a dashboard without any codes. Isaac?
Thanks, Ed. So I'm going to share my screen briefly. I hope everybody can see my screen. So for this part, we are going to try and create a dashboard, a very quick one. We might not deal with all the tips Henrietta gave, but we will try as much as possible to show how you can easily create an interactive dashboard that you can share with your audience. So I'm going to use Looker Studio. It's a Google platform which is free to use so long as you have a Gmail. So that's what we are going to use. And the question we are trying to answer is, your leader is considering allocating additional resources to the company's stores. The goal is to strengthen support for top performing stores and products. Based on the data, which regions, customer segments, and product categories should the company prioritize to maximize profitability? We are going to use a very popular data that's available, is the Superstore data that most folks use for some of these demos and practice. So in Looker Studio, once you log in, this is how the platform looks like. We are going to create a new report, so choose a new report here. Once you come into the new report, you are able to really connect several data sources. It can be a Microsoft Excel, it can be a BigQuery, it can be several options. Almost every data source you can connect to. But for this purpose, we have the data as an Excel file, so I would use Excel. the data is already uploaded as a demo, but if you are starting afresh, you just go to new, drag that file in here, and then you add it to your report. Okay. So it gives us this blank platform for us to work with. Looks like the data didn't load. Let me add again. Okay, so I'm going to start by trying to set up the canvas for our dashboard. Oh, super. Okay. And then I'm able to go to this side and make changes to this header that I'm creating, can increase the size. Let me make it center and bold in it. I'm going to fill in the background to just make it nicer. Because of that, I'll change the color to white so that it's visible. Okay. So the first chart we are going to try to create is sales by region. And so we can come to our chart and you have a lot of options based on what we are trying to do. I feel like a bar chart might best represent. We want to see which the sales by stores and the region the stores are in. So we are going to go sales by region. Once you bring the chart into the canvas, it automatically picks up some data, but we can come to the setup and really make changes and choose the data we want. So for this purpose, our dimension will be region, because that's what we are interested in. So we just pick region here. And also the metric we are interested in is sales. So we come in here and look for sales, put sales in there. Right away, we have our chart done. We can take this off because we wouldn't need it. Now with Looker Studio, once you have the chart, you can go to star to really clean it up and make it look nice. So we need our title. So we'll click here. What else can we do? Okay, let's change the color to this color. Labels. To clean it up, we will take off the S as is gray to make it cleaner. Given the title saying it's sales by region, we wouldn't need this legend here, so that we just, like we said, make it as clean as possible. So I'll take off the legend. What else can we clean up here? Okay, for now, we can leave it as it is and move to the next one. So the next one we're going to do is to add a chart for profits by category. For this one, I'm going to use a donut chart. Go to the setup. We are interested in profit by category, so we change the dimension to category. A metric to profit. We don't need this one for now. So everything is done with the setup. So we can go to start to add our title. It's saying category by profit. We can change it to profit by category. We just so we are not making it cluttered, we will just go with a single color, and to be consistent, we will change the color to be the same as the one we have. Okay, let me change it around in a bit to make it nicer. I'm going to change the location of the legend to the bottom to make it a little bit easy to see. Yeah. Okay, so for our last chart, we are going to try and do profit by region and category. And for this one, let's use a table with heat map. Go back into setup. We are interested in region. We are also interested in another dimension, which is this segment. So go to segment. And the metric we are interested in is profit. So we go to profit. Don't need this one again. Me change, take the off. Let's add a summary row so that we get the total value here. So then we go to the star one. Let's add a title to it and say profit by region and segment. Let's wrap test. Change the color of the font so that it's visible. We don't need the row numbers, so we'll take that one off. Okay, let's change the colors again to make it consistent. And with this table, we can choose to make it just heat map numbers, just them numbers, or even use a bar in there to show. But for this one, we'll just use the heat map. And let's make the numbers compact again here. I'm going to just make sure the columns are distributed evenly. See if there is something else we can do here. Okay, let me change this to just total. Okay. So we are almost done with our dashboard. We can format the size to just make it align. Okay. doing just one last check in the setup to see if there's anything else that we can do to clean it up or make it look nicer. Okay. So our dashboard is ready. We can just go to present so that it shows as full size. So basically, we've created a simple dashboard just to answer the questions that we initially had. So overall, the question was our leader wants to strengthen support for top performing stores and products based on the data, which region, customer segments, or product category should the company prioritize to maximize profit. So from the dashboard, it becomes quite clear to us that the region that has the highest sale is the West. We also know that the category that's very profitable, the most profitable, is the technology one. The dashboard itself is also very interactive. So let's say there is a question that's okay. So in the West, what category is very profitable? We can just click on the West, and it will change the dashboard for us and shows that office supplies is the most profitable for the West. Once we have that information, we can reset and it goes back. We can also answer questions like in terms of technology, which area has the largest sale. We can click on that, which also change this, and we get to know that East has the largest sales when it comes to the technology section category. We can also answer the actual question, which region and segment is very profitable and should be taken very seriously. We can see from this heat map that the West and the consumer section has the largest profit. This part is also interactive. We can choose just the West, and it will show us that within the consumer section, technology is still the highest. We can go to a different area to also see. So it's really interactive, can tell the story. People can interact with it and really answer questions that they necessarily didn't ask, but related to the question that they asked. So that brings us to the end of the live demo. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Isaac and Henrietta. I definitely learned a couple things today, especially utilizing Looker Studio. I didn't even know that you could present and then click on the data to go a little bit more in depth into it. So that's good for me to know later on. I really appreciate that. And then I do see in the chat that Kenneth did say that this can easily be done also using Gen AI, and that's so true. Like we can further develop this storytelling of data through reinforcement learning. So thank you for also providing that. I don't have any questions, but if anybody would like to ask any, we definitely have a couple minutes to that. So I'll wait and see if anything pulls up. Awesome. And in the meantime, I will just let everyone know that this webinar is a part of our AI and innovation programming rolling out soon at MacEwan University School of Continuing Education. Our flexible and stackable courses were specifically designed to equip learners with the skills needed to blend durable skills like problem solving, creative thinking, and technical expertise like data and visualization that make AI feel a little less overwhelming and a little bit more of a competitive advantage. For more information on these courses, you can either go to MacEwan.ca/AI innovation or scan the QR code that I will be sending through in that email later on. Our course, Data Democratization, begins on November 19th, which is not that far away. It's crazy. And it features many topics that we've covered today, plus a little bit more. So I'll also be sending that out in the registration email as well, too. I do have a couple questions that did roll in. I hope that you're okay, Isaac, to answer them.
Yeah,
The first one. Awesome, thank you. The first one, it says, is it okay to upload the document with confidential information to Google Looker Studio or other providers?
Yeah, so like Gen AI and a lot of these free tools, we usually would want to be careful the information we are uploading. But with Looker Studio, for instance, it's mostly based on Google Drive and your information already there. So if you have that there, I think you probably could use that information. A lot of organizations also have BigQuery, if they are using Google Cloud Platform. You can connect Google's Looker Studio directly to it without having to upload your information. So when it comes to really confidential information, I would say play it by ear, really make sure that this information is not something you want to it to be out there. It might not get out there, but you'll have to really think about the information you're putting in some of these tools too. And go by your organizational guidelines in terms of data security and data governance stuff.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense for sure. And I know that there are ways to kind of eliminate that confidential information from Excel or what have you due to Google Sheets. So there are ways to also do that and then still upload the information as well too. Our next question is Looker Studio page says use for free. Is free access limited or unlimited? I believe it is free. Is that
Yeah,
correct, Isaac?
yeah, it's free. I've never had to pay anything for it. So and I've been using it for quite some time now. So I would say for the foreseeable future, it's going to be free and you can use it.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's a great place for storytelling. Great. That is all the questions that we had today. So thank you everybody for joining. Like I said, I will stop the recording and make sure it gets out to YouTube and then send it all out to you later. Thank you again to Isaac and Henrietta for taking the time out of your lunch hour to come join us today and speak about all data storytelling activities. It was super informative. Thank you again.
Thank you.